Hello, welcome to another edition to Inside the Grace Track. My name is Pastor Kevin Robertson, and we do these things every Tuesdays and Thursdays on Facebook, and it's on YouTube on Tuesday, both interviews. And so our goal with this is what we end up doing is we're interviewing people that have taken our Grace Track and really hearing their stories. And so today I'm going to have the privilege, and I have no idea where this is going on this interview with Korak Taylor. Now, welcome, Korak, to the edition of Grace Track. It's always good to have you, or it's good to have you today. Korak, how long have you been going to this church?
I've been going to this church a little over 30 years.
Okay, 30 years. So you've seen a lot.
I have. I've been through a lot of rough times with the church when it was, really small and on the verge of closing, all the way up to it growing to close to 300. And, I've
And then
seen a
going
lot of
back
up and
down
down.
again.
I've seen a lot of ups and downs.
Yeah, we definitely have gone through up and down. So I was curious, Korak, you grew up in this neighborhood, right?
I did. I grew up probably 5 houses away from the church corner where your house is, Kevin. I grew up maybe about 5 houses away from there.
Okay. Now tell us about your family. You big family, small family, good family, crazy family? All the above?
I have an amazing family.
Okay.
I'm one of 6 children.
Okay.
So I have a very big family. My mom has, I think, 23 grandchildren.
Oh, good night.
A few great-grandchildren. And so I grew up in a very small house with a lot of siblings. So we were very close. We fought and bickered like any family does, but the one thing my mom and dad instilled in us is to always love each other. And no matter what, no matter how angry we were with each other, that we couldn't stay angry. So it was interesting. My family wasn't Christians.
Okay.
And so my dad was an agnostic, and we grew up, kind of hearing about God, but not really knowing God.
Okay. Was your mother agnostic too, or just kind of in the middle of?
So my mom grew up Catholic.
Okay.
My dad grew up Catholic as well. But for whatever reason, they never introduced us to Jesus or religion at all.
Right. Because last week I interviewed Martin, and he calls himself a recovering Catholic. And it just seems like even in the Christian church, when you were brought up as Catholic or as Christian, when you see hypocrisy or see inconsistencies, it's like most people are to say, I'm done. I don't want to deal with it. I'm leaving. I'm doing this. So when did you begin to have some kind of a hunger or desire for God? Did someone share Christ with you, or was it something inside of you that goes?
So I used to work down at a plant store down the corner from our house, and there was a lady who was a teacher. I don't know if she taught Sunday school, but she taught at the school when the school existed at the church. And we would say hi and goodbye. We'd wave. I didn't know her. She didn't know me, but we saw each other every day pretty much. And so we would wave. And then one day I went to have lunch, and she was there. And we started to have a conversation, and, she started talking to me about Jesus. And,
Wow.
and I was like, yeah, I don't want to hear about any of that stuff. But I told her, let's go ahead and have lunch again, and I'll tell you what I believe.
Now, how old were you then?
I was 22.
Okay.
Yeah, probably just turned 22.
So what did you believe?
So I believed in evolution. I believed in, that we came from monkeys and blah, 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 and all that other good stuff that evolution teaches us. So that's what I had believed at that point in time.
Right.
And then we had conversations, and the conversations, turned into, oddly enough, dating. We started dating, and she had informed me that I can't continue to date you because you're not a believer.
Oh, really?
I
What
thought
do they
that
call
was,
that, missionary dating?
yeah, missionary dating. I
Well,
thought,
I'm dating this person because I want to save his life from eternal
yeah, I
damnation.
don't know. But I
Okay.
thought that was the most ridiculous thing I had ever heard in my life. You can't date me because I'm not a Christian. And I thought, I'm better than most Christians. I don't cuss, I don't drink, I don't smoke, I don't do a
Right,
lot of things.
right.
Um, and so what makes you holier than me? And so
That's so true, isn't it? Because
yeah,
it's almost like they're putting themselves on this big pedestal, and you're the peon down there.
yeah, it was like, you're better than I am.
Yeah. Well,
And
that's
I
what
thought,
yeah.
yeah, and I thought that's just crazy. That's silly. And and so we had this very interesting conversation one evening. If you guys remember payphones, I was on a payphone talking to her, and we got into this argument about dating. And I hung up, and I stormed off to the church to talk to the pastor to say, look, you tell me why I can't date this person, because this doesn't make any sense what she's
Wow.
telling
And
me.
then this is this church, Marina Christian.
This is our church
Okay.
at
Who was the
Marina.
pastor then?
The pastor was Pastor Arthur.
Author? Yeah, it was author. Yeah.
Arthur Menachem.
Okay.
And this was in the evening, and I always thought the pastors lived at the church, so I figured he was there, but
Right.
he wasn't there. And she had talked to me about giving my life over to Christ, and so I sat on the steps, and I said, okay, and I'm going to talk to Jesus. And that evening, I gave myself over to Christ, and
Wow.
I've never looked back since.
Well, one thing that I've noticed, because I've known you for 22 years, your walk with the Lord is solid. And I think this is my speculation. Your walk with the Lord is more intellectual than emotional.
Yeah, I'm not an emotional person.
No, you're not.
I mean,
Because you
I'm
make
not,
fun of me crying.
yeah. Real men cry, Kevin. Real men cry.
Okay. And real men
But I'm
don't.
not. I'm not a really emotional person, and I think that stems from my father.
Right.
When I was younger, I was very emotional,
Okay.
and my dad would always say, "Stop that crying," or "Be a man," or blah blah blah. And I think I learned to stop being emotional.
Right.
I learned to say, okay, you know what? I don't need to cry about that.
Right.
I don't need to feel that way.
Right. And it's interesting because knowing you, I would think you're very analytical when it comes to decisions that you make. And I like to use the word analytical because it's actually a big word that I can pronounce correctly. So, and I've noticed when it comes to leadership in the church, you don't go off on off on things. You just kind of look at it and just kind of say, this is how it is. And I would assume that's the same way you accepted Christ. You kind of looked at it and just decided, okay, this makes sense.
It wasn't that way.
Okay.
Really. It was, I am a very analytical thinker. My wife likes to say I'm predictable, but I like to say I'm stable.
That's true, isn't it?
Yeah. And I'm very consistent.
Right.
I'm consistent in how I respond to things, how I react to things. But with my relationship with God, my introduction to God was very different. It was very emotional. I mean, I hadn't cried that much, and I don't know how long.
Wow.
After I accepted Christ, and there was a lot of spiritual battles, especially with my dad after I accepted Christ, because my whole attitude had changed. I didn't know anything about God.
Right.
I had never been to church, really. So I went to church that first Sunday and had no clue what I was doing. I just stood around there kind of listening to the worship music, applauding, and
Right.
when everybody else was applauding,
Yeah.
kind of it looks like
All looking around. Do I sit? Do I
everybody's
stand?
yeah, yeah, exactly. I did all of that stuff, and but I had a very strong spiritual leaders. Arthur was an incredible teacher,
Right.
and he walked me through the Bible, and that's where it became analytical, a little more analytical
Right.
for me,
Right. Right.
because I could read about God,
Mhm.
and so it's on both levels, both emotional and analytical, and there's a lot of growth during that time for me.
And Arthur's really the one that kind of mentored you to be involved in leadership within the church as well, didn't he?
Yeah, he's the one that got me started with being on the church board,
Okay.
um, being involved with worship music. And a lot of it was because we didn't have a very big church. We
Right.
were a very small church. I think we had maybe 30, 40 people. And there was a lot of issues going on with the school, because the school was still open at that time.
Right.
And he wanted, kind of fresh perspectives.
Mm-hmm.
And so I spent a lot of time in prayer meetings, a lot of time in the Word, a lot of time with his family. A lot of people thought I was his son. I spent so much time over there.
Yeah.
In fact, that was a very funny incident that happened. I giggle about it now, but it wasn't funny when it happened, where Arthur came over my house to pick me up because we were going to like a revival meeting or something like that. Again, I was the first in my family to accept Christ, and my father came storming out and knocked on Arthur's window and said, "That is not your son. That is my son."
Oh, really?
And I was like, "Dad, what are you talking about? You're embarrassing me." But that was my dad. My dad was very, I think, insecure in who he was in God's eyes.
Right.
And so he wanted his kids to adore him, and I absolutely adored my dad. I mean, my dad was my idol. But he didn't want us to be drawn away by somebody else. He felt threatened by Arthur.
Like jealous. Why is my son, like spending time with his father figure and not me?
Yeah, exactly. Instead of me. Well, and I didn't spend time with my dad because years ago he told me he didn't want me to be anything like him, and so me being an analytical person, I said, okay, I'm not going to be anything like you. And, which is probably one of the reasons I don't smoke, I don't drink, I don't cuss, I don't do all of those things.
Yeah.
My dad was very fluid.
Well, it's almost to the point our parents can be incredible, like our fathers can be incredible teachers on what to be like or what not to be like. And there's times that I look at my dad and I go, I don't want to be like that. I don't want to. I don't want to. And then there's these moments that we have in our life. You go, dang, I just acted just like my dad. And you're just going, oh, this is my worst nightmare. Or will somebody will tell me that has known my dad for years, you're just like your dad. And that's not the best compliment, with any child.
I think, I don't know. I think in some cases it is, because that's who raises us.
Yeah.
Our parents raise us and they mold us. Good and bad. There's good qualities and bad qualities in everyone. And I think when I look at my dad, take out all the negative stuff, the positive things that he left was a deep, deep love for family.
Right.
That's why my family, there's such a big family. I mean, 40 of us.
Oh, yeah.
25 of us went to the Philippines recently, and we had an amazing time. And you get that many people, you're around family for 3 weeks. Hey, you're crazy, right? Most people are like, I'm not doing that. I can barely stand them for a couple hours, let alone
on the other side of the planet.
Exactly.
So Arthur ended up resigning, right?
He did. He ended up resigning probably about 4 years after
Was it
I
hard
got.
on you?
No, it wasn't.
Okay.
I moved him
Okay.
to his place in Virginia.
Okay.
I still keep in touch with them every once in a while. I'm really good friends. Jana's great friends with their oldest daughter, Sharon.
Okay.
And so we still keep in touch, and
Right.
it wasn't really hard. It was a phase in my life that I said, okay, I'm ready for the next phase.
I believe I met his wife or him about 4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah, they came
Yeah.
back to church and surprised me
Right.
actually.
It surprised me because I think it was a Saturday night service, and because I knew you talked about him, and I just had no idea. I'm acting like, oh, he lives here, he's moved here, and then he said, I used to be the pastor here. My name's Arthur, and oh, because you get nervous about that kind of stuff, you know?
Yeah, I mean, he was great for me.
Yeah.
And I thought he was good for the church, but he was
Right.
great for me.
Right.
A new Christian and growing and learning.
Right.
But the church needed, something new.
So do you think that eventually that I think for me, my relationship with my dad is always evolving. It's always, there's times where I just go, and there's times that I have empathy and a love for him and a compassion, and I just want to reach out. And your dad passed away, what, 4 or 5 years ago?
My dad passed away, yeah, about 4 years ago.
Oh, 4 years ago.
Yeah, it'll be 4 years this year.
Yeah. So where were you with your dad there emotionally? Did you, obviously wasn't feeling jealous with you anymore, or how did you guys end up?
So I think we ended up in a good place
Okay.
because I always adored my dad. And I think as I got older, it helped me to understand him a little bit more.
Yeah.
And it helped me to understand kind of some of the struggles that he went through. And as I go through those same struggles in my own life, some of the decisions I have to make and some of the things I have to deal with, I see a lot of him in there. And whether he led me down the right path or showed me what the wrong path was, either way, I'm still learning from him.
Right. Which I think is cool and deep. And I remember when your dad passed away, that I think I interviewed you on a Father's Day once about your dad, and you were, I was trying to get you to cry. Because if you're listening to the podcast, Korak always made jokes with me about because I cried easy. So my whole goal was, in a sense, because I thought you had an incredible story about your dad. I was thinking in the back of my head, I wonder if I could get him to cry. I wonder if I could get him to cry. And when I remember, there was no tears.
No, I got close. When I think about my dad, there's times that I get close.
Right.
But then there's always that voice in the back of my head, don't cry, real men don't cry. And so
you can give advice for me to cry, but it doesn't work for you. That's funny. So so obviously, there was Mil Haddad, who was a pastor, which is, I would say he was like a father figure to you as well.
Yeah, he came at a great time as well, because I was, kind of transitioning into adulthood.
Right.
And he had older children. And so he actually married my wife and I with
Did he really?
Yeah, him and my father-in-law, who's also a pastor.
Right.
They joint married us. Yeah. And I remember the first time we told him we were engaged, because we were engaged when he first started there. And he was like, oh, we're going to have a wedding. I was like, yeah, we're getting married in 1.5 years. And he was like, 1.5 years? What? So,
but
did you actually
wait 1.5 years?
He's a great guy. Yeah, we actually were engaged for about 3 years.
I was engaged 6 months.
Yeah. Well,
But then again, I was older. And
yeah.
so then after, and I had the utmost deep respect for Emil Haddad. He was for me, he was such a godly man and really handled his transition from his church in such a respectful way, which the denomination kind of came in and just said, oh, we need a change and all this stuff. And then it's interesting because I was going through a transition at the same time where the senior pastor who I was under said, we need a change. And, you're out, Kevin. So I was kind of, oh, let's put Kevin at Marina with not being interviewed or anything. So I remember the first time you and I met was at Marie Callender's. Was it Marie Callender? Mm-hmm. Which does not exist anymore. And the thing is, and we need to get this open and out. Korak says till the day he dies, he's going to believe that I said this. And I don't remember saying this. But what did I say when we first met?
So I will take this to the grave with me, that we were all sitting around, the church board was sitting around, and Kevin was introducing himself, and he was telling us a little bit about him. And he said, I have a brain tumor. And I think, great, this guy is here, he's our new pastor, he's going to pass away here in, 6 months or something. They're just setting us up to fail here.
And even if I didn't have a brain tumor, they're still setting us up to fail.
They're setting us up to fail, and but Kevin's been a great asset. I'm so thankful for all the pastors that I've had, because I've seen the journey. Yeah. One of the nice things about being in a church for so long, you can see the journey. At least for myself, and I've seen it also for the church. And there's a lot of honesty and openness, Kevin, that you bring to the church, that I think it allows people to release their fears and their doubts and draw closer into God. And I'm so appreciative of that. I know I don't always tell you how appreciative I am of that. But I am truly appreciative of that, because I've seen so much growth in people's lives in the church.
That's true. And we've
gone through, with you.
Yeah, we've gone through some hard times too.
Yeah, I mean, we certainly have. Yeah. We've gone through some ups and downs, but one thing that has, I think, remained constant is your commitment to hearing God and being faithful and loyal to God and following what God is telling you. And I don't think you can ever go wrong doing that.
Listening to God's voice. Yeah, you're right. And it challenges us, to grow and continue to learn. And so we started Grace Track a couple of years ago, and you've been Christian for 30 years and been a long time and have a really solid foundation. What made you decide to sign up? Because most Christians like you, I'm putting it as
yeah,
that came out wrong. Most
I'm
Christians
labeled,
like you
now.
are totally unteachable and think they know everything. But what made you decide I'm going to take Grace Track?
As a Christian, we all go through various stages in our lives, hill, mountains, and valleys. And I think when I signed up for Grace Track, there was a time in my life where I was feeling, I've gotten a little distant from God. And I know it's not him that's moved. I know it's me that's moved. Right. And so I need to get involved into this Grace Track and go a little deeper in my relationship with God. I never want to be just a, surface level Christian. Right. I want to be deeper with God. And when I gave myself over to Christ, it was completely. 100%. We're all still have learning to do and growing.
Yeah.
We never stop that journey. But there had been a point where I felt, I'm not hearing God as much. I'm not doing some of the things that God would like of me to do. Our conversations have been briefer. This might be an opportunity for me to kind of rekindle that love for God.
So who is the facilitator in your group?
My facilitator was Brooke.
Brooke. Okay.
No, not Brooke. It was I think it's Brooke's group, but I think it was Becky.
Yeah, it was Rebecca. And
yeah.
Brooke's interesting. He wrote the whole thing, and then he gives it to Rebecca and says, "You facilitate it," because it was written for people to facilitate.
Mm-hmm.
And so, what are the one major aha moment that you go, "Oh, good night"? This is like
there were lots of aha moments throughout throughout Grace Track. I think that's one of the nice things about Grace Track is that it helps you tear down some of the walls that we've built up over the years and really start to dive deeper into why those walls exist and where we want to go, where we want to be, what we want to be. And I think those were some of the aha moments with me is that I am, because I'm an analytical person, I'm probably also a very judgmental person.
Throw it out there.
Yeah.
You're honest.
I'm also, I'm an honest person.
Yeah.
So you're gonna get honesty from me, and that can be taken two ways. One is, oh great, he's honest, and two is, oh man, he's honest. I wish he wouldn't have said anything. So I found that I'm a very judgmental person, and the person I judge the most is myself. I'm really hard on myself, and no matter how much I judge others, I judge myself probably 4 times more.
I think a lot of people are that way. I know I'm that way, and I know, our mantra is no judgment, only love, and I always joke, no, it's no love, only judgment. And the thing is, I'm the same way. It's just like I can talk to somebody that's really getting on me, and I can say, what you're telling me now is nothing what I'm telling myself. I just, and I think this is where we learn to embrace the grace. Of like, I can give other people grace and other people, but man, you're right. You can be so hard on yourself.
Yeah.
So when did that? Are you still hard on yourself, or it's just a struggle?
It's a struggle. It's a constant struggle with me. Throughout the last 5, 6, 7 years, judgment has been one of the things that I've really tried to work on, and use words of kindness more than criticism. And it's a work in progress for me, for sure. Because I can be, the first word out of my mouth can be very critical, and I have to say I'm sorry a lot, and that's one of the great things is I've caught myself saying things with even people at work that wasn't right, and I've gone to them and said, you know what, I'm sorry, I apologize for saying that, it's you don't deserve that, and I had no right in saying that. And I think that's one of the areas that God is really, he's molding a lot. He's really pushing a lot and working on, is trying to get that judgment out, because that's going to also help me to stop judging myself.
Yeah, I want to go so much longer with you, but I'm trying to keep these within 35, 40 minutes. But I kind of want to end it this way. During this pandemic, it's been hard on you and the company you work for right now, hasn't it?
It is. We've had to, like a
Well,
lot
first
of
of all, where do you work?
I work in downtown
Okay.
for a company that markets the city. And so, we unfortunately had to lay off a lot of people,
Right.
just like a lot of companies have had to do. And it's really hard because you work with people for a long period of time, you get to know them, and for no fault of their own,
Right.
you have to let them go. And so it's been really hard. I mean, it's hard emotionally and hard physically because now we have less people to do all the work.
Right. Didn't you
But
say it was like 100 people that you guys had to lay off?
it was a lot of people. Yes, it was a lot.
That's hard.
And we, it was something that you know is never fun to have to do. I work in an area where I oversee technology for our organization, and I've had to over the years see people leave and shut down the system, shut down access, and things along that line. That's never fun. It's probably the least fun thing in my job that I have to do. And I'd much rather see new people come to the organization, the fresh start, excited about working. We'll get it out of them quickly enough, right? But I'm just kidding. But to be excited about what we do for the city, and it's just a great place to work. I love it.
Yeah, and how I want to end on this note too, that it was, I think, 18 years ago that you came up to Jennifer and I, you and Jana. It was during a Wednesday service or Sunday service, and you've been trying to have children. And you were ready, I think it's 4 years, 5 years, I don't remember, that you asked, can you pray for us? Because we're kind of starting to look into the fertilization and all that stuff. And as analytical, we know that it's super expensive and it's not guaranteed. And so I actually remember Jennifer and I sat down in the front row when we had pews in the sanctuary, and we prayed that you and Jana would be pregnant. And what's interesting is you guys were pregnant when we were praying.
Yeah, and we didn't know. We had actually been married almost 7 years.
Right.
And we decided, you know what, we want to have kids, and we wanted to have kids, a couple of years into being married, and we were really having a hard time. I joke around with Jana because I was like, I come from a big family, so I know it's not my side of the family here. Something's going on, but it's not on my side. And we went to a fertility doctor. We started to walk down that path, and then we said, you know what? We haven't done the most important thing, and that's to pray. So let's bring this to the church and let's pray about it. And we did. We brought it to the church, not knowing that we were already pregnant. God had already answered the prayer before we even prayed it.
That's an incredible story. So now, today, how many children, the age of your children?
I have 3 children. That first child is getting ready to graduate this summer.
I love it.
He's 18. I have a 14-year-old daughter and a 9-year-old daughter.
Okay. The 9-year-old's a handful.
Yeah. and I want to end with this, Kevin.
Okay.
Is after we prayed for my son, my son was born to us, but he was born premature. So my son was 3 months premature, and there was a chance that he wasn't going to survive. And so there was a lot of questions and doubts that we had, not with our faith, but, with God's decision to bless us with a child.
Mm-hmm.
We said, Lord, you're giving us this child, and now you're going to take it away from us. Yeah. And my wife and I would spend just about every night in the NICU going to see him. And then we would also spend it in prayer. And we would say every night that, Lord, your will be done. If you want us to be blessed for a couple of months, with this child this way, then we will be. And if you want him to grow old and gray, then he will.
Right.
And
that's very
thankfully he's doing very, very well. He has no signs of being premature. And
he's
God's
smart
true
as
blessing.
a whip.
Yeah, he's
analytical too. He loves to read. He loves to, it's a lot like his dad. I'm sure he's not going to take that as a compliment.
Yeah, no, I don't think he wants to hear that.
Anyway, I totally enjoyed this conversation, Korak, and thank you. And thank you for listening to this podcast and watching this podcast. And feel free to make any comments. And we are looking forward to the day, sooner than later, that we all can gather together in that funky little church that Korak has been part of for 30 years, and that those doors can be open again. God bless you, and have a great week. Bye-bye.